Hello and welcome to yet another edition of the Lagos Transportation Agenda, the show which highlights topical issues, current events, current and emerging trends in the dynamic world of transportation. I am Austin Inyang, your host. It has been said that there can be no rights without responsibilities and obligations on the part of stakeholders. Where do your rights begin and your obligations end? The same goes for road use by motorists, commuters, and by pedestrians. What are the rights, especially of pedestrians, and what are their obligations? To discuss this issue with me on the show today is a regular on our show in the person of Mrs Bolanle Edwards. Mrs. Edwards is the convener of the Strap and Save Child Foundation, or SSCF for short. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Always nice to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Mrs. Edwards and I will be discussing safeguarding the rights as well as enforcing the obligations of pedestrians in particular on our roads when the Lagos Transportation Agenda returns just after this time out. Please stay with us. Welcome back on the Lagos Transportation Agenda with Mrs. Bolanle Edwards, convener of the Strap and Save Child Foundation. So, the definition of pedestrian is somehow ambiguous, maybe. Who is a pedestrian? Does this include maybe all these people that roll skates on our road, wheelbarrow pushers, and so on?
No. I mean, by the definition, simply put, pedestrian is anybody who is walking on the road from point A to point B at any point in time. So that means you're not making use of your cycle, of your tricycle, of your bicycle, or your car. Okay. Moving and walking from point A to point B is a pedestrian.
So you would describe all these skaters and people who use non-motorized?
They're road users, but they're not pedestrians.
Oh, okay.
They're all road users, but they're not pedestrians.
So they belong in maybe one no man's land in terms of the legal definition.
Legal definition. You know, two major mobility is recognized. Yeah. When you walk on the road or when you are moving in a vehicle. Okay. Every other ones are just other road users, like the cart pushers, the skaters, and all of that. They use the road, but really you can't categorize them as road user. Maybe category A, you can't put them as that. Maybe C.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's talk about the pedestrian environment, especially in Lagos State. The environment in terms of the infrastructure. How would you assess, from the point of view of your NGO and how you engage with stakeholders, how would you assess pedestrian infrastructure on our roads? Okay,
thank you. Good question. So far, I must say that Lagos State has come a long way when it comes to transportation, and I must give it to Lagos State for being very proactive in making sure the infrastructures are put in place. I'm sure you know that a lot of road rehabilitations are going on right now.
Yes.
And this will continue for as long as Lagos State exists. When there's an expansion, when people are moving from one point to another in Lagos, there would always be that need for road rehabilitation, road infrastructure, or road furniture, as the case may be. The challenges are among us, and you just must be able to surmount them. Challenges ranging from human, what will I put there now?
The human factor.
You have the pedestrians and you have the motorists as well, all combined together. So when you're dealing with road transportation challenges, you must think emotional, you must think psychological, you must think physical, because all of those things combined together make who or what you find on our roads. And pretty much so, we must say that Lagos State has been able to put, but then a lot still have to be done.
Such as? What more can be done?
Expansion of road, side streets, our sidewalks, if I may dive into the sidewalk now, I don't know if I should talk about it. I mean, it was a very, was quite a relief when we saw that we were now beginning to think global by putting sidewalks on our roads. And what does a sidewalk really mean? It's just an elevated part of the major road whereby pedestrians can take. And this, I say with all humility, that we need more than that. I've seen a couple of them in and around Lagos, but in the civilized world, wherever there is a road construction, you must have a sidewalk. So really, of course, you can't get to London and not see a sidewalk, or get to Dubai, or get to Middle East, or go to some other places. You would find them. So it comes with the development of any state, that when you are putting up roads, rehabilitating roads, you must have the sidewalk. But what do we have here? I must say that it breaks my heart when I see the way the sidewalks are being used in Nigeria.
Maybe sometimes it's as if I see some so-called sidewalks that are not really sidewalks in the real sense of it, because you will find a sidewalk that is just a covering for a gutter in some parts of the city. And so people who insist that these are sidewalks are opposed by those who know that it's the gutter. There are no sidewalks here.
If it can serve, it depends on how the road was being rehabilitated. If you go to places like Alausa, you go to some parts in Surulere, Bega, Yanokwaja, there are some places there that you won't see that drainage coverage you're talking about. You will find a proper sidewalk. Where you find the drainage cover are the roads that have not been expanded, and they're using those ones as a, like palliative measure for people to just use. However, it's not even safe for you to go on that, because anything can happen. Some of them are already opened, some of them are bad. So in a proper system, you should have the sidewalks that are being purpose-built for pedestrians at any point in time. But then what you have here, you see that a lot of people who cannot afford to take a proper shop, they come on the sidewalk and they sell their wares. Who gives them the authority? They do it with so much boldness. Or you're wondering, how did they come about it? Who is the person who is authority that is in charge of that? Are they paying levies? Because they can't wake up one day and you go to Bega under the bridge and just put up your ware. And you now find out that the proper user of the way can't even use it. The pedestrian is now the one trying to maneuver, going on the main road to work, whilst the people that shouldn't be there are there. You find the motorcyclists there, you find the Marua guys there. You find somebody selling pomo and fish on it, and somebody selling okrika. They're on the sidewalks. Meanwhile, the proper users are not using them. So where are we?
Would you say that the average pedestrian in Lagos or in the country at large is actually maximizing the use of these provisions, these facilities? Or is this because it's being prevented by these other external forces? Because if you look at the zebra crossing, even when people wait at the zebra crossing, they have to wait for the traffic to thin out before they cross. They cannot expect, realistically, a vehicle that is coming to just stop for maybe the 10-5 seconds that it will take to cross. So would you say that the pedestrian himself is at fault here, or is he just a victim of these other forces?
Well, at any point in time when you're a pedestrian, you are at the risk of danger, accidents. You can be knocked down, especially if you don't take the proper safety measures when you're on the road. In this part of the world, we're ready to say what is affecting us and how do we mitigate against this. Let's leave out the people that we have talked about. It's all attitudinal issue. People wouldn't feel that they owe anyone, even themselves, the responsibility to making sure that the facility are well kept. If we're in a very sane climate where things work and you know the use of the facility and infrastructure that's been put in place, I believe there is no excuse for your ignorance, because you cannot give what you do not have. So if the information has been cascaded and you are being harmed with that information, you have no reason whatsoever to be on the side of the law, other side of the law. So assuming we don't have all these issues of people and you do not make use of it, I will give a very good scenario here. The pedestrian bridges that we have. Government has been able to rehabilitate some of them. Some they had to build altogether.
Yes.
Some are really in a bad shape now. That's even endangering to your life if you have to go on that bridge. But for the ones that have been rehabilitated, the ones that are being constructed newly, if you look at the percentage of the pedestrians who use them, it's so minute.
Exactly.
Compared to the people who are crossing the highway.
Exactly.
Right underneath those bridges, you have people crossing 3-4 lanes to the other side of the road. So what do we call that? Do we say that they are ignorant? They don't know what that bridge is meant for? Okay, let's play the devil's advocate and assume that they do not know what it's meant for. But they get people to tell them that go and use the bridge.
Exactly.
And that, I mean, what really beats me is the fact that we have government officials crossing them on the road. This shouldn't happen. So in a normal climb, when we want to, let's think global now, because that's the way we should be thinking when we do another thing. And like I always say that Lagos State thinks global.
Yes.
But how about the people, the localized situation that we have, the challenges that are mitigating against all the things that have been put in place? How do we harness the opportunities that have been put in place for people? I would say that you have to continue to educate, educate and educate. And when education is not taken, there are consequences for your action.
All right.
In life, you make choices. You are given the choice. You have consequences for your action, and there are chances for it. So the consequences of your action, either good or bad, will make you think on how to make use of those infrastructures that have been put in place. Okay,
just briefly before we go on break, what is the role? I mean, yeah, you talk about educating. I am one of the school of thought that there is a point at which education stops, and you just simply have to make an example.
Absolutely.
So what kind of example do you think should be made that will be very effective in sending the message across to the, if you like, pedestrian community, that this is not done, should not be done?
Thank you. Can I take your mind back to when we had war against the discipline?
Back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s, in Lagos State especially, where nobody would be tied, you litter the road, would be tied you to not use the pedestrian bridge.
Exactly.
Or we didn't even have sidewalks.
Exactly. And not even as many pedestrian bridges. Not as many
bridges then.
Yes.
Because those bridges are still there. If you go on Ikorodu Road, some bridges have been there for over 40 years.
Yes.
You know? Why can't we bring back that time, that moment, and even improve on it?
Exactly.
I know the government has done a lot. They put agencies. I mean, we waste a lot of taxpayers' money here. Why would I have to put somebody at the point of your own safety to make you safe to where you're going? It's a waste of taxpayers' money.
Really?
But back in the day, the military will flog you. And when they use you as a deterrent to other people, you will not do it again.
Exactly.
So when we begin to pay for our actions, let the consequences be as grievous as it can be.
Exactly. At least in the early period.
The early period, it can be fines. Then let's make it more gory. I mean, it sounds very brutal. If you think about the statistics of people who die on our roads yearly, WHO says that about 1.3 million people die on the roads. This includes motorists and pedestrians. And 70% of it is being contributed by pedestrian safety and accidents. Question is, where are we in Nigeria? How many of those percentage are we also churning? How many of the statistics are we having to it every year? These are mistakes that can be avoided. These are one death too many. We can mitigate against it. We can reduce the mortality rate and can begin to inculcate this habit and instill safety lifestyle into people that, you know what, is your life. I've heard and seen cases where people cross on the zebra cross and they get knocked down.
Exactly.
In climes where things work, where systems and structures are in place, you don't get knocked there.
You don't.
In fact, you get fined or imprisoned if you're a motorist and you do not wait for a pedestrian. But is other flip side of it in this part of the world. Why would I want to cross and I'm on the zebra cross?
And you're
still so afraid of being knocked down. A child has been knocked down on a zebra cross before. In Ikeja here, it has happened. People have been killed on zebra cross. So the question is, do we know the information? What does the zebra cross stand for?
That's great. I've been in a country, an African country, where whether there's a pedestrian on the road or not, it's the law that when you get to it, even if you are the only vehicle, the only person on the road, you stop for 5 seconds at least before moving on. It's just as simple as that. Mrs. Edwards, we will take a break now.
Thank you.
And when we come back, we discuss more on other very related issues on the Lagos transportation agenda. Please stay.
Great economies are built on good transportation network. This is why Lagos State Government through LAMATA has been working tirelessly to enhance the state's transport infrastructure and implement the Strategic Transport Master Plan (STMP) for Lagos and create a world-class transport network for the metropolis. The STMP would deliver 6 rail lines, 1 monorail, 14 BRT routes, 26 water transport routes, 3 cable car routes, and several road intervention to promote the integration of the transport modes. When all these projects are completed, there will be lower emission, leading to better health for all, lower road crashes, better quality of life, and faster economic growth. With the BRT already running in some corridors, jetties being upgraded, and rail line from Okokomaiko to CMS coming on board soon, life of Lagosians in the face of Lagos is changing every day. A healthier and more prosperous Lagos is in the making, and LAMATA is driving it. LAMATA, keeping Lagos moving.
If you're just joining, it's the Lagos Transportation Agenda with Mrs. Bolanle Edwards, the convener of the Strap and Safe Child Foundation. Now, Mrs. Edwards, let's talk about another group of pedestrians. So, of course, every one of us also includes children, which is our next destination, if you like. Now, a lot of children make up a large percentage of the pedestrian population, especially in a city like this where there's so many schools, some of them really far from home. A few schools have provisions for school buses and so on, but a lot of children, including unaccompanied unaccompanied by adults, ply our roads. What is the situation? What more protections can we offer these young pedestrians?
Young pedestrians. Okay, I'm going to start by telling you a story. And this is a scenario that I'll paint that happened about 1.5 years ago, where a popular school in Lagos State was 2 children were knocked down. Yes. 12 of them were injured, but 2 of them actually died, a boy and a girl. December 7, precisely 2021. And what happened, there were pedestrians at that point in time backing the traffic, but unfortunately we had a bad driver who was just running at a terrible speed, knocked them down, and the parents and the guardians will have to live with this for the rest of their lives. So when you have a case like that, what should the government do? A government, of course, is not about the government alone. When we talk about transportation in any country,
yes,
it's a joint effort. It's a private partnership, private-public partnership. So you must have that done, and which was what was done in the Lekki-Ekpe axis, where you have this collaboration. When you have children exposed to such danger, especially when you have schools situated on highways, the least the government can do is to put things that can mitigate against traffic accidents, such as putting speed breaker there, have a zebra cross, or even have the road school zone sign that tells you that there's a school ahead, you need to slow down, which is a minimum of 30 kilometers per hour. We have some of them in some designated areas, but especially in schools that are very, very exposed to such dangers. Children have no business on the highway. Private public schools, they have absolutely no business working. But peradventure, we have such schools already, situated there before there's an expansion on the road. Because there are some schools or facility structures that were put in place before the road was put in place. We must begin to, because that's what is done in other climes, grow them together. rehabilitate. Now you're seeing that there's a school here, or the school came after the road was constructed, or either the road came after the school was constructed. Either way, they must go pari passu. The roads must be able to accommodate motorists and pedestrians in such a way that nobody is endangering anybody's life.
Exactly.
In the case of that one that happened that year, I mean, a speed breaker would have probably be able to guard against that accident.
Yes.
Can we begin to look at ways where schools like this can be identified? If you already have the frontal space of the school on the highway. So let's have more sidewalks. The bus stop shouldn't be so far away from the school. Let's take away the front gates into side streets, even if it means we're constructing another one. What would it take to do that? Let's also have men who cross children. We've had this happen on the Ekpe axis before, where over 6 children were not, they died. They died because they didn't have an adult to walk them or to flag any motorist down for them to cross. We should stop killing these youth and children. These are people that are meant to take over the economy. These are productive people, and in the productive years that they're going to grow the country. So if we begin to lose them at this stage, who's going to? Is it the older ones that are already retiring? So let's try and make the space more safer for them.
All right. We've taken major stakeholders to task on the issue of safety and so on. The government, the private sector. Let's talk about the pedestrians themselves. I mean, we have identified all the dangers they face and so on. What can they do? I mean, let's start from, you mentioned one about these children were backing traffic. And one of the things we learned when we were kids is you don't back traffic. What other things do you think the pedestrians should take note of while on the road? Okay.
We should, as a pedestrian, especially if you're walking at night, can you have reflectives either on the back, on your wrists, like something that reflects that there's somebody moving on the road?
On the clothing?
On the clothing, yes.
Who provides that?
A cyclist, you provide yourself to save your life. If you must be a pedestrian at any point in time, because really, you're only sure about your own safety, you're not sure of the person. You could be a drunken driver. I'll give another scenario of a cyclist that was knocked down 3 weeks ago around Osborne in Ikoyi. He was cycling in the morning and a drunken driver knocked him down and he died.
Wow.
You know, I mean, he had everything on because I know a lot of them are all these cyclists, they have a club and they have all their kits on.
Yes.
So what happened? He was drunk. It was a run, I mean, it was a hit and run until now, and the life is lost. That happens all of the time. This is not the first time this will be happening. So can we begin to take our own safety more seriously, because you never can be sure of the person coming behind you. Have a reflective. Then government should also put out more lightings out there. You know, let's have more lights. At times, most of these roads are dark. They're dingy. You may not even see the person right in front of you. You're just walking. You can walk into a manhole that is open.
Yes. You
can get trapped. I've walked into a manhole before.
Oh,
you know. So these are things that we do. So you must take your own safety into your hands.
Exactly.
Do as much as you can to make sure that you're safe on the road, and never you back the traffic. That's the first thing you have to do.
Exactly.
Never back the traffic. Face the oncoming traffic, and when you see that the car is doing wiggy waggy,
you can always see it from a distance.
Exactly. Move to a safe space. So all of those things you can mitigate.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mrs. Edwards.
Thank you for having me.
Always very enlightening to speak to you on the program.
Thank you.
And thank you also for being with us on the Lagos Transportation Agenda. And so that's the size of the show today. I hope you join me on the Lagos Transportation Agenda next week at this time on this channel for yet another very, very enlightening discussion on the program. Until then, this is Austin Inyang, your host, saying stay safe. And let me quote Mrs. Edwards, don't back traffic if you are a pedestrian. God bless you. Bye-bye.